I'm almost certain I should have heard something, the screaming from the crowd maybe, but every sound dissipated. I was beginning to wonder how I was supposed to play like this when I heard Terry's violin clear as ever. I put my hands on the keys and was surprised that I could hear the piano too. The experience was otherworldly. I chuckled, thinking that Terry had slipped something in my drink, a quote-unquote treat to make the night more fun. After the first repeat, I noticed something was wrong with the crowd. It was the same spread of open eyes and mouths, but I could barely make out dark lines of fluid dripping down each face. The liquid streamed from every eye and every mouth, staining anything it touched. It formed pools on tables and under feet. I refused to consider what the fluid might have been. At first, I thought it was a bad trip, then that I might be dreaming, but when I closed my eyes and reopened them, everything stayed the same. Right when I thought the nightmare couldn't get any worse, I heard the violin speak to me. "Don't stop," it commanded. The voice could not have been Terry's or my own. The words swelled with the melody Terry played. He turned his head to meet my eyes, and I could see desperation on his face. Somehow I could tell that he had heard this voice too. There wasn't much left in the song, so I sped up and Terry matched my pace. I tried to focus on the keys, but I saw bodies collapsing in the corner of my eye. Terry's violin sounded sharp in my ears. The melody cut into my mind, and I struggled against the urge to cover my ears. I had the last solo, but it became nearly impossible to focus on my playing because the lights began to strobe rapidly. Right before the end of my solo, the light cut out completely. We concluded the song, the two of us sharing a single chord. There was no applause. I sat in silence, frozen with terror. After an eternity, I felt something brush my shoulder and bolted for the exit. I tripped in my escape, but kept crawling to where I remembered the door being. The entire building was dark and empty. I didn't remember that many hallways when I went backstage to practice, but my anxiety could have been playing tricks on me. I sprinted through door after door in perfect silence, unable to hear my footsteps. My lungs ached, but I refused to take a breath or look behind me, even after, at last, I had found an emergency exit sign. My run through the streets was a blur. I saw faces saying words, but I ignored them and kept going. The cotton balls didn't leave my ears until I was back in my apartment with the door locked behind me. Since then, the piano has never sounded the same. That night, as beautiful as it was horrible. I can't tell how much of it was real, but no music I've heard since has come close to what I remember hearing from Terry's violin. Music just feels out of tune now, even my playing. I couldn't even stand listening to my records until many years later. Maybe I was cursed, maybe I was drugged, or maybe something just snapped in my head, but I'm too scared to find out the truth. This is the best I can manage with my recollection of what he told me that night and my writing ability. I should also mention that these are not the real names of the people in this story. I changed them to preserve privacy. It's safe to say if George is telling the truth, that he was probably drugged, but then the question becomes how much of the night was a hallucination. Here are the facts. George has some professional experience with the piano based on the advice he gave me. It wasn't stuff that any random person or even a musician of another instrument would say. George refuses to play the piano anymore, assumedly from some traumatizing experience in his past. Also, unless he is a fantastic actor, George gets sincerely emotional whenever he is reminded of this experience. The club The Gates has not ever existed in Chicago as far as I can tell, which makes me wonder where they are. I don't think this could have been a part of the hallucination if there was one, since George allegedly saw Terry for the first time that day only after he entered the club. A normal violinist with a normal violin should not have the capability to affect people in the way he described. However, in theory, a loud enough sound at the right frequency might have the capacity to damage organs. Terry was correct in that most instruments, including pianos, are not tuned perfectly to the pitch ratios that we use in our 12-note tuning system. I wish I could have recorded George's exact words, but since that night he hasn't returned to the bar. I have no way of contacting him, so I guess I'll never know the truth.